Good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Delvecchio, specializing in life transitions, home care, and the senior living industry.
And I'm Corrie Matt, a clinical social worker and psychotherapist specializing in grief and loss.
Coming up on today's show, it's Black History Month, and we'll be highlighting the progress that has been made over the last couple of decades, as well as addressing the challenges that continue to lay ahead. We're going to have Thierry Lindor, who will be joining us.
Very looking forward to that. I can't wait to share some of that information. But meantime, Matt, before we get to that, I understand that you have a few presentations coming up.
Yeah, actually, quite a big week. Two important ones that some of our listeners might want to be interested in. My wife, Stephanie, and I, we're going to be the presenters as part of the Atwater Library Connect Project Series. They do a bunch of excellent webinars, and we're going to be discussing downsizing and senior living trends this Tuesday, February 22nd at 2 p.m. You just got to look up Atwater Library, and you'll see all their webinars that they're doing. And on Thursday, in fact, I'll be presenting to FADOC, F-A-D-O-Q, about home care and seniors residences. What are my public and private options? I don't know if you know about FADOC. We've had them actually on our show. It's Canada's largest seniors organization. They have over 550,000 members. If you're not aware of it, check them out. They've got great discounts for 50 and older, and tons of great bargains for everything from insurance and travel and so on. So that's going to be this Thursday, February 24th. It's at 6 p.m. and you can look it up at FADOC about home care and seniors residences. What are my public and private options? Corrie,
always a treat.
Yes,
always a treat, Matt. No, if you haven't heard Matt, seriously, you gotta go out to one of these presentations. I always learn so much. Okay, that said, coming up, we're talking to Thierry Lindor. We're trying to get him on the phone right now. He is a young entrepreneur. He's a Canadian delegate of the G20, YEA, and the United Nations. In 2018, he won the Black Tech Matters Innovative Entrepreneur of the Year Award in Washington, D.C. He was recently recognized by the United Nations as one of the global top 100 under 40. That's pretty impressive. Most influential people of African descent. Today, he's launched a Canadian civil rights movement. He's by creating a platform called Colors of COVID, which collects racial data during the pandemic while helping to raise $330 million from the federal government and the private sector to support Black Canadian entrepreneurs. All to say, you can absolutely see why we invited Thierry to come onto the show in recognition of Black History Month. He's been on the show before, so we know what a treat that is. And so I'm hoping that Cedric has him on the line. Thierry, welcome to Life Unrehearsed. Not yet. Okay, he should be on soon. Matt, you sent the number.
Yeah, okay. We're going to try to find Thierry. He's a great guy. We've had him on the show before, and a real entrepreneur, activist, and a supporter of minority rights. And we thought it would just be appropriate in recognition of Black History Month that we'd have Thierry on. So we're going to continue trying to get him going. And Corrie, just before I think Thierry's on now, you mentioned in the second half is something also if for our listeners, we've had a real, since the pandemic about long-term care, and this investigative journalist, Moira Welsh, who's going to be on the second half, you have to hear what she has to say. She's been around the world about how long-term care is being handled in other countries, doing it a heck of a lot better than us in Canada. So that's going to be coming up. And I believe we have Thierry on the line. Thierry, are you there? Nope. still silent there. Okay, we're going to continue. We're going to continue trying with Thierry. Corrie, we in 2 weeks we have a very interesting show, and this is right up your alley as well. And I never would have thought about it, but you're a grief and bereavement specialist, and we're going to be talking about gender differences, the differences between men and women in how people deal with grieving and loss. It's kind of intriguing, and I guess there are differences.
Well, yes, we will absolutely be talking about them, and it's in anticipation of a workshop that is being sponsored by Myra's Kids Foundation. We're offering this professional development training workshop, and so stay tuned because you're going to be hearing a lot more about that. But I believe that Siri is on the line. Cedric? No?
Strike three, we're out, Corrie. Amazing. Okay, so other than that, I wanted to talk about an article that it's going to be in the Suburban newspaper. Just submitted it, and it's going to be in next week's edition. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about on our show, Corrie, in next week. And you talk about long-term care. Some people are still very nervous. If you do have to move your loved one to a long-term care community, many people are saying, I'm not so sure. I think we want to stay at home. And sometimes they stay at home a little too much, too long, but it's called aging in place. And people are wanting to age in place for longer periods of time. We get it. We understand you like your home. However, the home might not be set up properly. So we're going to be talking about some things you could be doing at home to help you age in place. And this is going to be actually quite interesting, not only for those that want to age in place, but for the kids, for the sandwich generation. Corrie, you and I always talk about the sandwich generation, but things, for example, where we may not be aware that there are funding out there from the provincial and federal government to help you with things like the bathroom is real tough. That's a high area for slips and falls. So why not put some grab bars up in the bathroom? And I'm not talking a towel rack. A towel rack is not a grab bar. So many stories I get, Corrie, where you're grabbing onto the towel rack, and that's creating slips and falls. Things like walk-in bathtubs or walk-in showers is a major renovation, but this helps you stay at home longer. Little things like lighting, just to help out in the house. Vision is, you lack of vision. It's darker, improving lighting, and other things. For example, what were just very simple things like pull rugs, mats, even in the bathroom, even outside the bathroom. So we want to be able to, we're going to be talking about that. And, as we're listening and waiting for Thierry, we're actually coming up to traffic very, very soon. So I think what we're going to do, I think we've got Thierry on the line finally. We do have to head out to the CJAD Traffic Center first. And we're going to come back with Thierry Lindor talking about Black History Month. He is an amazing individual. He does so much from an entrepreneur's perspective, minority rights, and he's got some fascinating stories to tell us. And we're going to talk about some of the progress we've made and some of the things we still have a long ways to go. So Thierry Lindor will be coming up after traffic. But first, let's head out to the CJAD Traffic Center from Jill Fitzgerald.
Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corrie Sirota, along with my co-host Matt Del Vecchio. And in recognition of Black History Month, we finally, after some technical difficulties, we have on the line Thierry Lindor. He's a founder of Colors of COVID, a Canadian civil rights movement. Thierry, I'm so happy. I can't wait to hear your voice. You got to tell us a little bit about yourself, and we got to squish in a lot in a little bit of time. And tell us about your work.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on, Corrie Matt. I'm really happy to be with y'all. My name's Thierry Lindor. I'm an entrepreneur, an active citizen. I've been involved in many different movements. I came out maybe in the public eye a couple of years ago as the founder of Remax Griffintown. That was back in 2014, 2015. I've been very involved in social justice movements, combating gentrification, economic injustices, and more recently doing the BLM movement as a Canadian of African descent. I've obviously taken a stand for the international BLM movement, Black Lives Matter movement. So that's what I do. I try to stay active. I'm anti-oppression, anti-injustices. I can't live around it or see it. It's just in my DNA.
Thierry, and so glad we're having you back on, and so appropriate to talking about Black History Month. A lot of people still might not know about Thierry Lindor. You are one of 10 children, from what I understand. Can you give us a background about your personal life?
Yes, I come from a family of 10 kids. My father was born in the beautiful island of Haiti and likes to say that he became a man in Chicago. So made most of his young adult life in Chicago, and then eventually ended up in Canada, where he met a beautiful 5'3" French woman from Paris that fell in love with a black man. So I'm a child of a biracial couple, and we're 10 kids, 10 brothers and sisters, same mom, same dad, no weird uncles, no weird neighbors, nothing. So that when you grow up in such a family, you learn about selflessness, right? You learn about community, you learn about love, you learn about love languages, and that's what I think I've been able to replicate in my entrepreneurial journey, but more importantly, as an active citizen, as a proud Quebecer, proud Anglophone and Francophone, black and white men. I like to say that I believe I'm the Montreal dream, I'm the Quebec dream.
Well, you certainly are a wonderful role model. Can you tell us a little bit about FACE?
Yes, FACE. FACE is a movement we created. The Federation of African Canadian Economics was part of my activism. I've always been an economic activist. I don't like to be called an activist because I know real activists that fought for the rights of women, fought for the Me Too movement, fought in the streets for not just Black Lives Matter, but Pierre Corrie and Freddy Villanueva, because we have our own stories here of injustices or police brutality, right? But more importantly, I've always been on the economic side, and the Federation of African Canadian Economics, or FACE, is a movement that was created right after George Floyd died, and we were able to co-produce with the government of Canada the first ever Black entrepreneurship program, and we landed $330 million to empower Canadians of African descent in an economic fashion. Because I truly believe that walk-in protesting is fine, but economics is where it happens. There's no social justice without economic justice.
It's so true. And I might add, you were recognized at Series, the United Nations, one of the global top 100 under 40 most influential people of African descent. And the Federation of African Canadian Economics that you're talking about is one prime example. Thierry, you are an entrepreneur, a real advocate for minority rights. There's a lot of work to be done, but we also want to turn, the media can be so negative, but you've seen progress. Can you, from your perspective, what has been some of the progress that has been made so far?
Well, listen, there's been tons of progress, and I think people should also realize we live in Quebec. We live in a very specific kind of context, right? Like, at least we forget that over close to 100 years ago, close to 110 years ago, Irish people, Jewish people, and Francophones were not recognized as being Canadians in this country, right? They used to hear speak white. And speak white meant speak English, right? But to a certain extent, minorities have always bounded together to get some form of justice. And I think that today, with the whole systemic racism, does it exist, does it not exist, with somebody that is a child of the Révolution Tranquille in our premier Legault, to think that systemic racism could not exist when it comes to black citizens, black Quebecers, is anchored in mendacity and fallacy. Because if we know for a fact that even Caucasian people of Irish descent, of Jewish descent, or Francophones once had to bound together to be called patriots and really stand for what is right, it's the same context, but now it is more into culture. And systemic racism is anchored in many different fashions. We see it in the housing, we see it in the media, we see it in the social justice or economics system. So that is where we are at today. Things have gotten better. To say that they haven't would be a lie. It would be false. But do we need to work more? Absolutely. We need to work more as society for women's rights. We need to work more as society for indigenous rights and also for black rights. So I do believe that we have a long way to go, but we've came a long way. It would be a lie if we said we did.
Thierry, your energy is contagious. It's unbelievable. That is the voice of Thierry Lindor. He is the founder of Colors of COVID, a Canadian civil rights movement. We're having him on in honor of Black History Month. You talked about progress. You talked a little bit about what needs to be done. So let's get down to what I say in Jewish is tachlis, the nitty gritty. What can people do as a society to improve relationships with the Black community?
I think that's a great question, Corrie, and you touched on it. And I think there's also great lessons to take from the Jewish community. I think our Jewish brothers and sisters have done great things when it comes to building communities, right? Also the Asian communities. And it often starts with economics. It starts with the family, and it starts with economics. I think that the first thing, and the reason why I'm prefacing this, is if it starts with community and it starts with family, the first thing we have to realize is we're one family. We're one family. It's called a human family. The second thing we have to realize is we're one community as well. We're really one community. And in a micro fashion, it's called the Quebec community, the Montreal community. But in the macro one, it's the Canadian, the human community. Once we realize this, it's a lot easier to understand somebody saying, hey, I'm going through injustices if I consider you to be a family member, if I consider you to be part of my family. But where we need to go in terms of economic justice, because this is what I fight for, is we need a little bit less black squares on social media and on Instagram. That's called performative marketing, performative action. What we need is concrete actions. I just saw in the news that Forbes magazine came out, $50 billion have been pledged by corporate America and Canada for BLM following 2020. Of the $50 billion, Corrie, Matt, only $250 million has trickled down to the community. So we need to have real corporations that have pledged and have performatively said that they care about Black lives to show us instead of telling us that you care about Black lives. We need CEOs to really be involved in this, to really understand that this is arguably the biggest social movement in the past at least 25 to 35 years in Quebec, at least since the Révolution Tranquille. So as such, CEOs and decision makers should care about this because ultimately we are one community, we're one family.
Absolutely. That's Thierry Lindor here on Life Unrehearsed. Thierry, we're running out of time. Real quick, you're a true entrepreneur. We have a soapbox here in about 30 seconds or less. What type of Black-owned businesses can you give a shout-out to?
I would like to give a big shout-out to Librairie Racine. They actually have a library which is anchored in education. It starts with education. It's a Black-owned library by a Black woman that is powerful in the community. I'd like to give a big shout-out also to podcasts out there. There's a couple of ones, Rap Politique, Technical Foul Podcast. There's a couple of great places where you can get information because we're going to get out of this through information, education, and a whole lot of love.
A lot of love is right. Thierry, we want to thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Take care, Corey. Take care, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging in. Great talking with you.
That's Thierry Lindor, supporter of minority rights. You heard him. He's such an advocate, entrepreneur, speaks so well. We're glad to have him back on the show in Black History Month. Corey, what do we have coming up on the second half?
Coming up, an investigative journalist named Moira Walsh. She'll be discussing her book, Happily Ever Older, Revolutionary Approaches to Long-Term Care. That's coming up in our Helping Moms and Dads segment after the 3:30 CTV News Update.